I live in the Tower of London, so I was really excited to try out the latest Microsoft Flight Simulator update, which includes a ton of terrain improvements to the United Kingdom and Ireland. We were testing this last night whilst live streaming. You can click the like button and subscribe so you don't miss it when we try new things out in real time. But I have to say, the update and Microsoft Flight Simulator looks absolutely mind-blowing, and this update especially has managed to fix one of my big bugbears with Microsoft Flight Simulator, and that specifically was when flying over London and some of the UK cities, especially at lower altitudes, things could look really quite zombie post-apocalyptic, with lots of buildings kind of rendering in a bit triangular, trees looking off, things just seeming a bit muddy and messy. With this update, London and some of the other locations we've flown over just look really solid and absolutely photoreal. This game is the most photorealistic video game that I think I've ever played. I've flown into London multiple times on passenger jet just to spite Greta Thunberg, and if you fly a jet into this now in this sim, it looks identical, absolutely identical. In the video here, we're flying at a much lower altitude to terrify the office workers and to even further vacate the mostly abandoned Canary Wharf. So even at this lower altitude, things really look much better than they used to. And I don't think it's just really about the textures of the buildings. A large part of it is the 3D models and the quality of the 3D models, and then stuff like the textures on the side of buildings, stuff like chimneys and smaller details. That is really noticeably better, or at least to me it's a lot better now than it used to be. Another huge difference that seems to have stood out across the UK from the last time I played Microsoft Flight Sim properly is that trees, hedges and smaller bumps and terrain details also just look a lot more realistic, and things just seem a lot more solid. Once you approach about 3,000 foot, it is literally photoreal. Now you do still have some things, interestingly, like cars driving up the side of buildings and some weird traffic stuff going on, so I do think they can tighten some stuff up. It's not absolutely perfect, but this as a thing to do in a video game, forget if you like flight sims, forget if you like Microsoft Flight Simulator, this is just something that you have to see when it comes to real-time graphical technology. It really is mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. We can see here on the left you've got the DLRs, we're coming away from Canary Wharf, and you've got the city buildings in the distance. The lighting and the clouds and stuff are definitely a lot more refined in Microsoft Flight Sim. That was actually addressed a while ago. They updated how clouds and lighting was rendered and all those things. But I think it's at this point in time, the simulator really has come together and really does feel just a lot more cohesive. It's taken 4 years of continued development polish for it to really be... I mean, it was mind-blowing when it came out. It was mind-blowing when we first saw it. But I'd say in the last few months or so, it's really hit a threshold of quality that's really quite remarkable. And obviously they've done other terrain updates and location updates for different countries. But I don't live in those countries, and so I'm not able to be as critical of what it actually looks like, or what does it look like from the air, how does it really compare to what it's like in reality, what's the actual feel from your feeling in reality. And as I say, as someone that's flown over London a lot in passenger jets and is very familiar with the UK and has walked most of these London streets breathing in the fine pollution, this captures the sort of sense, the feel, the grey miserable colour tone and underlying despair that you get from London, and it captures it so nicely. It genuinely is a work of art. Now, it's all very well things looking absolutely incredible, but if you need a Cray supercomputer, I don't even know if Cray makes supercomputers anymore, an IBM mainframe, I don't know what we use as supercomputers, but you know, if you need like a mega mainframe, super multi-billion-pound computer to run that, there you go. There's a lorry going up the side of the building there. That's normal. If you need a supercomputer to run it, then that's not really helpful, is it? Because people won't actually be able to access it. Now, in my case, I'm using a 5800X3D processor, which I highly recommend, one of the X3D chips, if you're going to be playing simulators, flight simulators, driving simulators, because they really do process these types of games a lot better than the non-X3D chips, because they've got more L1, L2 and L3 cache on them. And I have a 3080 Ti, so that is quite a high-end system. I'll be honest, it's not a budget system, but we have got the graphics cranked up pretty high as well, and it does run with the plane flying, all the instrumentation. You can see what it looks like here. It does run very consistently between 50 to 100 FPS, sometimes more, but it doesn't tend to drop to excruciating FPSs. And perhaps more importantly, the frame timing is really a lot more consistent without annoying stutters and weird breakdowns. Now, I will say, when you're coming into airports like Heathrow, or you've got a lot of airport details on, that is still a bit of an issue. When there's a lot of air traffic around you, that does seem to take a disproportionate toll on the frame rate of the simulator. Cockpits with lots of stuff in them as well are more of a toll as well. But when you're talking about the effects of the terrain on the performance, that component seems a lot better than in the past, when I've had to really tweak things just to get the terrain to look nice and then run smooth. So I think that general consistency is something that's really massively improved in Microsoft Flight Sim over recent times, and then you can really appreciate it in this latest update with all the extra terrain. So look at that view of London. Look at the London Eye, Tate Modern, as a dysfunction in the distance. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Look at the bloom, which is quite a simple effect, but it all just looks absolutely gorgeous. Now, in this update, there's obviously not just London. You have Newcastle looks great, and actually something I really noticed with Newcastle was there's buildings that are sort of semi-constructed, and the photogrammetry quality is so much higher now that you can see inside of these semi-constructed buildings or partially collapsed buildings. It does look a tiny bit janky and a tiny bit cardboardy and rough at the edges, but this is at like 1,000 foot in the air. When you're higher, it's madness, sheer madness, and it's those imperfect buildings and imperfect details that then I think really help to trick you into it feeling like a real and solid thing. Now, unfortunately, they haven't scanned the whole of the UK with photogrammetry. It's mostly near major airports and major cities. You've got Bristol, Brighton, a large proportion of London, going all the way out to the coast. So if you're flying into London on the typical flight routes, that whole route will be photogrammetry. Leeds, Liverpool, Newcastle, Sunderland, Wembley, Cork, Dublin. You have the cliffs of Dover. It doesn't look too good, but it's perfectly fine at altitude. I'm not sure about glider flying. I have noticed, though, where the terrain has been photogrammetried or where you've got the high resolution terrain, I think for glider pilots that are doing glider flying or very light aircraft where you need the lift, the updraft from more like steeper sort of not too high but steeper bits of cliff face, for example, that should actually work a lot better now. Previously, a lot of areas where you could do glider flying or you potentially get lift in real life, the resolution of the terrain wasn't high enough, so it wouldn't be sharp enough to actually produce the correct amount of lift. So that'll be really interesting to actually test out properly. But stuff like Dover and a lot of the cliffs around the northeast, that sort of stuff just looks a lot better. There's also now 79 points of interest, 31 in England, 13 in Ireland, 5 on the Isle of Man, 11 in Northern Ireland. We're gonna have to try and fly around the Isle of Man racetrack, guys. We'll have to investigate that. I'm not sure how good quality that is. They've also handcrafted 5 airports: Cork, Samborough, Cardiff, Farnborough Airport. Farnborough Air Show's happening at the moment. Check that out. And then, you know, all these like bridges and details. Now, some of the handcrafted things don't look that amazing. Some of them do look really nice. I think we've actually got to a point where the handcrafted stuff looks worse than the photogrammetry things. So it's nice that they've handcrafted a bunch of buildings and bridges, but you kind of notice that they feel a bit video gamey, whereas the photogrammetry, even like mundane photogrammetry stuff, like there's a coal power plant we just flew over which has got its roof collapsed. That looks incredible from the air. You know, it's not hand modelled, it's photogrammetry. It's set the new benchmark. So it is nice that you've got those the handcrafted details and objects and points of interest, but it pales in comparison to the photogrammetry. On a negative side, I would say the photogrammetry stuff really contrasts starkly with the non-photogrammetry stuff, or the areas in the UK where they've got the higher resolution mesh data and height data. It really does contrast with the areas that don't, so it's a lot more apparent when you're on a sort of scummy low resolution non-detailed part of the UK. Especially of note is when we were flying over Newcastle to South Shields and to North Shields, you have this, it's amazing, most of the metro line up to South Shields is photogrammetry, and then there's this line just about near South Shields, and it's like, oh, now it looks dated. And it's quite funny because when Microsoft Flight Sim came out, you'd be like, oh, the auto-gen terrain and stuff looks really good, these fields look really good. But now the contrast, due to the sheer quality of the photogrammetry versus bog standard fields, it really does. The bog standard fields stand out as being pretty poor. And with the photogrammetry, even when it's not buildings and it's just fields, that higher resolution texture detail, I say little weird small things like hedges or the side of roads, small stuff, even in fields, just looks mind-blowing with the photogrammetry, that compared to the non-photogrammetry and low resolution texture stuff, it makes that other stuff look terrible. So it's not all good, but mostly it's absolutely phenomenal. I am dying to try this on the Quest 3. Hopefully I can get some time to set it up. I've got this all set up on my 4K TV at the moment, but I really want to try it in the Quest 3 because it looks so good in 2D. It's going to look mind-blowing in VR, but then it's really going to be a question of what performance we can get out of it. I mean, look at that, guys. This is a video game. This is insane. Absolutely insane. We're passing near the Apollo Theatre over London, near Hammersmith, I guess, or maybe we've gone past that. I don't know where we are. Mind-blowing. You owe it to yourselves to really give this a go and check out the locations. And I think you can really genuinely, more so than ever, just enjoy the sightseeing aspect of this game, which I think is what it's always done really well. Bog standard sightseeing, flying, and VFR, visual flight rule flying. The big question is, though, and the biggest problem with Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 is that it doesn't have proper gameplay in it. There's missions you can do, landing challenges, they're all a bit crap though, really. And the big thing that we're all waiting for is in November, Microsoft Flight Sim 2024 will come out, and supposedly it's actually going to have a proper career mode in it. Though we don't know if it's going to have like an actual progression of you earning money or doing proper jobs, or if it will just be more challenges or more like some of the older Microsoft Flight Sim games. I am really hoping that they actually have a proper career mode, like you could be a bit of a commercial pilot, or you have objectives, maybe something a bit more like Euro Truck Sim. Doesn't even have to be as advanced as that at all, but you know, you're doing jobs and you're progressing something, and you've got a bigger motivation to do things and get rewarded for landing precisely or doing jobs. You know, that would really help give a greater context and more sort of meaning to the gameplay in the game. The graphics in the environment now was just so good that just doesn't really need to be touched. Let's be honest. So, well, we're gonna have to wait and see. November for Flight Sim 2024, but categorically, even if you're not a flight sim fan, as I say, you owe it to yourself to check out this update and just see, just have your computer melt. The crisis, the crisis of 2024, absolutely mind-blowing, guys. So that's basically it for this video. It was just me gushing over Microsoft Flight Sim and really just wanting to let you guys, subscribers and fans of the channel, be aware of the Microsoft Flight Sim, the changes, because I think there's a lot of people that probably haven't played it for a while, and you're like me, you kind of pick it up every now and again, and you probably have been like, oh, I don't know if it's worth it. Yes, yes, it's very much worth it, especially with this UK update. And I think I'll also check out some of the other countries that I've not had a good look at recently. So thanks for watching. Happy flying, everyone. Happy tea drinking. Take care. And until the next video or live stream that I see you in, goodbye.